Hello, everyone, and welcome to Entertainment Weekly's What to Watch, the show where EW staff help you solve your viewing dilemmas. I'm your host, Gerrad Hall, and contractually obligated to hang out with me today are staff writers Devan, Coggan, and Chancellor Agard, and digital news writer Marcus Jones. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Happy to be here, boss.
Happy New Year.
Great to see all of you. Well, wholly new Batwoman Batman, you may have guessed it, we're kicking things off with Season 2 of Batwoman, which premieres Sunday on the CW. This season, we're saying goodbye to Kate Kane and hello to Ryan Wilder. Javicia Leslie is stepping into the iconic suit and cape after Ruby Rose stepped down last year following, in part, injuries, but also surely, possibly, some quarantine introspection. Happens to all of us. The series, which introduced TV's first live-action lesbian superhero, continues its groundbreaking streak as Miss Leslie will be the first Black Batwoman. So, Chance, what can fans expect from Gotham's new hero and this new season in general?
Well, the show really throws Ryan into the Batsuit almost immediately in the premiere. But it takes a while for her to sort of fully join the Bat team. But I think by having this new character, Ryan Wilder, who so Kate Kane was Bruce Wayne's cousin, and so they're both they come from wealthy backgrounds, very privileged upbringing, have never sort of struggled in their lives outside of the various emotional traumas and tragedies they endured as children. Whereas sort of Ryan, when we meet her, she's homeless. She's just been released from prison for a crime she didn't commit. She spent her childhood in sort of Gotham's very corrupt and terrible foster system. So it's a different kind of hero going under the cape as opposed to the sort of these privileged white people doing the sort of white man's burden sort of thing. We have Ryan, who is sort of part of the group of people that she wants to save and help, which is really cool and takes the whole Bat mythos in a different and cool direction. And it also allows the show to touch on some social issues they didn't feel comfortable touching on, given that Kate Kane again came from such a privileged background. They have that ability now to sort of dig into some of those issues that we've been talking about in the country as well, like police brutality and over policing and all that. So that's just some of the ways the show is changing with this new lead.
How will the show handle Kate's departure, Ruby Rose's departure?
Well, Kate Kane disappears. You'll find that there's more to that in the premiere, but all we can say now before premiere is that she does disappear. But it's important that she's not dead. Showrunner Caroline Dries made it clear a few weeks after Ruby Rose announced that she was leaving the show. She made it clear they weren't going to kill off Kate Kane because she didn't want to fall into sort of the bury your gays trope. So Kate does have a presence this season in terms of the characters trying to find out what happened to her. That's one of the driving mysteries for the season.
Makes sense. All right, so, what would a superhero show be without some good villains, of course? Do these showdowns deliver the bam, smack, pow that fans love to see?
As of right now, I can only speak to Ryan's confrontation with Alice. That we can't get into why, but Ryan develops her own personal sort of conflict with Alice.
Ruby Rose's casting as Batwoman was historic. They're doing it again with Javicia Leslie. Both of them are LGBTQ actors portraying an LGBTQ character. So how do you see this show, as it's breaking barriers kind of in the bigger live action superhero world at large, what it's doing for everyone else?
Well, I think with Batwoman, I think it's really part of this sort of it being so groundbreaking. Also, it's just doing what the character Batwoman did in the comics. The modern incarnation of Batwoman was introduced in I guess 15 years ago in this weekly series called 52 because the powers that be at DC realized that they needed more representation in their comics, and so they made a point. They said they wanted to introduce a prominent LGBTQ hero that would stick around for the long haul. And what's great about Batwoman is, yes, it's breaking all of these barriers with these two castings, but I think it's very much as part of a larger movement within the superhero genre as a whole. I mean, we have Nafisa Williams on Black Lightning, who plays the queer superhero Thunder, and a Diop on Titans, who's a black woman playing Starfire, and the character doesn't have like a human race in the comic book, and so her casting was pretty big. Over at Marvel, we know that we will get a homosexual character in the Eternals movie as well.
Right.
So I think it's just I think more than I think it's just more like Batwoman is showing the ways in which the superhero genre is trying to be a bit more progressive after not being so for such a long time.
Well, it's great how they were able to pivot here, and we are going to pivot as well. We need to take a quick break, but when we return, bienvenido a Miami. Stay tuned. Welcome to Miami. Welcome back, everyone. Imagine this, 4 of the most influential figures in history together in one place. And no, not right here in this Zoom. I'm talking about Amazon Prime Video's One Night in Miami, where director Regina King explores a world in which Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke all met in a hotel room. The fictional encounter takes place on February 25th, 1964, the day after Muhammad Ali really did beat Sonny Liston in the infamous boxing match, and a million dorm room posters were born. Marcus, this is Regina King's directorial debut, but she's already garnered almost universal rave reviews. She's also the first African-American woman to have a film premiere at Venice. So is it safe to say she has solidified spending many more nights and days in the director's chair?
Oh, certainly. So I think one thing to note about Regina King is that this is her feature directorial debut. Mm-hmm. And so the great thing about this film is that she's already really made a name for herself as a TV director on shows that we've all heard of. This Is Us, Insecure finale. She even directed the show she was on, Southland. So she's really been working hard, and it certainly shows that she knows what she's doing with this film. I think it's both an important story to tell, but she tells it with a lot of style, and so it's very entertaining.
Yeah, I remember the day the news that came through, we saw she was going to be directing. I think there was that kind of universal cheer through our office. We knew this was going to be something good. All right, let's talk about the performances. Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X, Eli Goree as Muhammad Ali, Aldous Hodge as Jim Brown, Leslie Odom Jr. is Sam Cooke. These are some of the most iconic African Americans in history, and most have been portrayed in film or TV before. So how do these 4 handle depicting such notable figures? Do you think there's a standout among them?
So personally, one thing I love about the movie is that if you don't know these actors' names, you've probably seen their faces. So even Eli Goree was on Riverdale for a time. Leslie Odom Jr., of course, is very known. Hamilton is...
Person of interest.
Still a phenomenon. Exactly. Person of interest. No one's heard of Hamilton. That doesn't count. But yeah, Kingsley Ben-Adir was on High Fidelity, and then Aldous Hodge.
He played Obama also, by the way, Kingsley,
exactly.
in the Comey Rule.
Oh my God. It's so Obama and Malcolm X. And then finally, Aldous Hodge has been in everything from Invisible Man to Hidden Figures, all these other projects. So this is sort of like a new milestone moment for them. It's a real upgrade. They all do super, super well. I will say, though, that it's not exactly a shock to hear that Malcolm X is one of the standouts in the film. Mm-hmm. But also Leslie Odom Jr. does a really great job with Sam Cooke. And they're sort of the two sides of an ideological debate, because of course, given the time period during the 60s, there's a lot of talk of the civil rights movement and how, as these icons of their time, what they can do with the platform they've been given. And so that's a really interesting, huge part of the film as well.
And this script is based off of Kent Power's 2013 play of the same name. He also serves as the screenwriter here. So how does it work on film compared to the stage? In what ways, if any, does it deviate or work better as a movie?
Totally. I mean, that's certainly a concern with any sort of stage to film adaptation, is that it's going to be a lot of talking, not a lot of locations, really feel like a film that you could just film in your living room if you have really great Oscar-winning actors attached to it. And that is like certainly a part of it. A lot of it takes place in a hotel room. But like I said, Regina King is a pro at this. She really had an idea of what she wanted. And so you see like really big sweeping shots of the boxing matches that Ali was, at that time Cassius Clay was a part of. And there's one scene that takes place at a concert that's probably one of the most unique concert scenes I've seen, that really gives you an idea of how it was from the stage all the way to the back of the room. And so there's a lot of finesse in there. Like, don't take it for granted. She is really thinking more outside of the stage. By the way, quick shout out to Kemp Powers as well. In addition to this, he wrote Soul too. So that might be another draw to the film, and sort of how he can think really outside the box.
We need to take a quick break, but when we get back, put on your Elizabeth Olsen glasses, because this next segment is in WandaVision. Welcome back. Do not adjust your screens. Starting this week, fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will be able to see new adventures of their favorite fictional franchises, or triple Fs, as I've just now decided to call them, on the small screen as Marvel's Phase 4 officially begins on Disney+. It all starts with WandaVision, which wears its TV bona fides proudly, jumping through time to pay tribute to classic sitcoms of the past. Devan, you're up. In the Marvel Universe's version of What to Watch, would these faux sitcoms be something we'd recommend to watch?
Yes, it's like you said, this is sort of kicking off this new era of Marvel. And how exciting is it that, the first show that's sort of going to be kicking off this new era of Marvel TV is a show that is literally a love letter to television. It's sort of this story of Wanda and Vision, and they're sort of living in domestic suburban bliss, and they sort of get, sort of warped into this world of sort of classic TV sitcoms, going from the late 50s and early 60s, with things like I Love Lucy, the Dick Van Dyke Show, Bewitched through the 60s, all the way up through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even into some of the more sort of early 2000s sitcoms. And it's just a really, beautiful, kind of silly, playful world that we really haven't seen from Marvel before, but it really has that DNA of, the big, kind of dramatic Marvel superhero comic book shenanigans that we've come to expect. From having seen the first 3 episodes, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen have never been more charming and more fun to watch. And it's really, for me, as a longtime Marvel fan, I think it's the best they've ever been as Scarlet Witch and Vision. So I think it's a really fun sort of way to kick off this new era.
You brought up Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, who we last saw him. He was dead in Endgame. Yeah. So, what can you tease to people about how this all comes back together? How these characters are where they are.
So we don't have a lot of answers sort of when the show starts. It's sort of a big mystery, right? As to, last time we saw Vision, he was, Thanos was ripping the stone out of his head, and he was definitely dead. So it's a big question mark as to how he's back. But we see sort of Scarlet Witch and Vision living in this sort of, very picture perfect white picket fence sort of vision of suburbia. But very quickly they start to realize that, things kind of aren't quite as they seem. And so there's something definitely lurking underneath all the white picket fence and green lawns of what it seems to be.
Indeed, and there are lots of guests on the show too, including some familiar faces for fans of the MCU at large. So who shines, and what implications does that have on the future of the shows and the movies?
Yeah, so we have, there's a definitely, like any good sitcom, there's a really great supporting cast. You have Kathryn Hahn, who is sort of new to the world, as she plays sort of the stereotypical nosy neighbor trope, which you can't have a sitcom without a nosy neighbor, right? You have Tiana Paris, who plays Monica Rambeau, who, if you saw Captain Marvel, she's the little girl in Captain Marvel, and here she's all grown up. And how she sort of fits into this world is a little bit of a mystery. And like you said, we're also getting some returning familiar faces. We have, I know Chance's favorite, Kat Dennings, is coming back as Darcy Lewis. She was in the Thor movies. And then we have Randall Park, who he was an FBI agent in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And again, it's sort of a big question mark as to, okay, how do all these different characters from all these different franchises wind up in this weird suburban, fantasy world? So, and that's something that I think the show is sort of going to tease out and explore as the episodes go on.
Yep, I love what I've seen so far, especially as we've seen these different sitcoms that we were talking about. And you recently got to speak with Elizabeth and Paul about just how authentic some of these sitcom recreations were. It's kind of wild. And it turns out it was all down to the wire. Take a listen.
The thing that was so remarkable are these special effects guys who are used to like blowing things up and dealing with fire and like extreme wind were becoming puppeteers of props, and they were all like above us dealing with the funniest thing to watch was one of them was trying with a towel in the air. One had a towel and one had a cup, and he had to try and make it look like the cup was being dried, and it was very complicated with the strings and what they were trying to do. And it was just that kind of detail was from every department was just so funny to watch. Everyone, we have all this technology and now we're throwing it out the window and we're doing everything practically.
You can feel it in those shows, right? It feels like there's an audience in the room, in their apartment. And the reason is there's an audience in their apartment, and they're pitching. Well, the moment there's an audience in the room, it's hard to pitch to the camera. You just pitch beyond to the, and you get slightly elevated, bigger performance, I think.
Yeah, Elizabeth is so right. Isn't it crazy how practical effects are so much harder than they really seem, but they do a great job of it here. So speaking of upcoming Marvel shows, we asked fans on Twitter which show they are most looking forward to. We'll have the results of our poll when we get back. Welcome back to What to Watch. WandaVision is already confusing and delighting viewers on Disney+, but it's only the first of several new Marvel stories the platform plans to debut this year. Earlier this week, we asked fans on Twitter which of these new shows they're looking forward to the most. About 8,000 of you responded, and the results were closer than Scarlet Witch and Vision's marriage. Let's take a look. Coming in first with 38.1% of the vote is WandaVision, but in a very close second is Loki with 37.5%. Most of the replies seem to suggest a rivalry between those two shows. At 3000_Rosie said, Wanda and Vision deserve all the love because the series looks awesome and she deserves to be happy. But others, like at Elena_Ripley, took a less supportive stance, saying, I don't believe for a minute that more fans are excited about Wanda than Loki, especially considering Disney has been plugging WandaVision for months, and Loki has one clip with nearly 13 million views. I'm looking forward to Wanda, but Loki is number one. All right, so this question to all of you, did you expect this kind of competition from fans?
I think Loki won. I think it's fair to say like the hive around Tom Hiddleston is like pretty big. So like I am not surprised that he edged out or he almost won. I'm very happy that WandaVision did win because the Darcy hive is stronger. Clearly.
Were you the one to click all the votes?
I don't vote in polls, Gerrad. So no. I know. I wish I had.
Hawkeye 4.9%, and that's, by the way, that number might even be a little inflated because one person did tweet at MintJulep323 told us, I clicked the wrong one. Accidentally hit Hawkeye when I meant to hit Loki. Sucks I can't change my vote.
Am I going to be the one to say justice for Hawkeye? It is a little low. Like, guys, Jeremy Renner isn't the lead of Hawkeye. Like, I don't know if they've advertised it well enough, but they cast another Hawkeye. We don't have to watch the Hawkeye from Endgame be Hawkeye anymore. I believe Haley Steinfeld's playing Kate Bishop, which is a very cool character. So come on, a little more votes for that.
I mean, I completely agree. Like that's the only reason I'm excited about. I went from not caring about Hawkeye from when the past year and a half they're like, is Haley playing Kate Bishop? We don't know. And then they finally confirmed it last month. So that immediately took my. I went from being very just disinterested to being oh, I'm hyped for this now because of Kate Bishop. Mm-hmm. Also because the paparazzi photos of them shooting have made me very happy.
Yeah.
I was talking
Go ahead, Devan.
I was talking to Gerrad before the show starts, and I was like, justice for Hawkeye. I think that is, it's based on a sort of one of my favorite comic book runs of all time by Fraction in Asia. And obviously, you have Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop, but you also have, and we've seen this in the paparazzi photos, Lucky the pizza dog, who's this amazing golden retriever who goes on adventures with Hawkeye. And so I'm like, what's not to love?
I got to ask, which shows are each of you excited for? Chance, let's start with you.
WandaVision, because I think it's the one that looks the most unlike anything Marvel's done before. I think my when it comes to super properties, I definitely lean towards things that sort of break free from like source material and sort of do something weird and out of the box and interesting. I think WandaVision looks like it's going to try to do that. Also, just from the fact that Kevin Feige explicitly said that it is not a 6-hour movie; it is a TV show. Which is music to my ears, really. So, and also like Falcon Winter Soldier just looks like every other Marvel movie comparatively. So, WandaVision is like my pick.
That's fair. That's fair. Devin, you said Justice for Hawkeye, but is that the one you're most excited for?
Actually, probably the ones I'm most excited for aren't even on this list. They're further in the future.
Yeah.
We've got She-Hulk, which I'm really excited for, with Tatiana Maslany, and Miss Marvel with Aman Vellani, who is another. Those are ones that again are not part of the Marvel universe yet, but I think they're going to make a lot of waves as things as those get closer.
I agree. And Marcus, what's your pick?
Comedy, Monica Rambeau, Catherine Hahn and Randall Park in the supporting cast, floating cups used with practical effects. Sign me up for WandaVision. I'm ready.
Well, I hope and don't think you will be disappointed. I got to say, what we have seen so far, Dev and I, it is a gosh darn delight. So looking forward to that as well. Well, no matter which heroes you prefer, safe to say, all you Marvel fans out there, you have a lot to look forward to in 2021. And that is our show for this week. Thanks so much to my guests. We'll see you next week on What to Watch.